This is a small take on Sapolsky's idea of determinism. I've just been watching to some interviews relating that Sapolsky's logical determination of behavior is evidently very clear and correct. But when he gets to the point of the definition of free will, he actually doesn't understand that he lives the same realm, so he cannot define free will if he gets out of the same logical environment. If you have to go on a scientific, physical determination of something, that's the world that he is reasoning on, you cannot evidently have an out of that world participant. So free will evidently has to be defined within the parameters of his idea of physical existence. So if you go on in that, you get to the point that uh, free will physically can only exist in a deterministic way. Uh, what is the causation of that? You have to define in a material way free will. Uh, what is free will? If you define it in a material way, the only thing you can define as free will in this case is you cannot predict from all present conditions, future conditions. Everything else is out of the same parameters of physicality. So you do need to go to the physical world to define free will and the problem of the impossibility of the watchmaker is the only physicality that you can put in there. And so it's the only way you could define in a material deterministic world free will. And henceforth, free will exists because it doesn't matter what kind of happening, what kind of decision you take, it was caused by something that in some moment passed either or into a quantum process that is random or a chaotic process that is undetermined in its result. So, physically, to define free will, you only have to understand that what you do now cannot be predicted by everything in the past, simply because there are some things that are simply either chaotic, either probabilistic. That simply happen that way. So, afterwards, ex post factum, yes, you can say everything was determined, but ante factum, before it happens, you cannot get to the point that you know what will happen in the future. You say that's a small space for uh, something being free in will, but actually it's free in its results. Secondly, if you go on a different path, you also have to say if you know something, the way it should behave, you could change the way it will happen. But if you're changing it, will happen. If you're changing your behavior because you know it was caused by something, you're actually acting in a certain direction. Since I said the direction was actually determined without you knowing of it beforehand, because it depended in some moment of some kind of indetermination. It is in that aspect, in the only aspect that something physical can be understood free. So, if you try to put a material world and then think in that material world of something outside of it that exists, eventually you will go to the point, you get to the point that it cannot exist in the material world. It's eating its own tail when it starts to say, oh, free will doesn't exist because it's not in the world. Surely you have to define in a way that it exists materially. Then you might find it or not. But really, you end up by finding it in the material idea that you cannot predict the future by everything because some things will be random. And remember, what defines what you are? What you are is defined by whatever you have lived, whatever has passed, whatever past generation, whatever causalities there are. So there is surely a causality that creates you. But that causality creates you, and you decide, determined by those causalities. That doesn't get the same answers every time because from time to time you will pass for something that is not determined by the past but only by the result, and it only got to the point of that result, but it was a toss of dice what would the result would be. You therefore have a materialistic view of free will because you decided the way you exist to decide into something. Oh, you couldn't exist a different way. Yes, you could, but probabilistically you didn't. So afterwards, yes, I can kill all kind of free will after everything has passed, but not beforehand. And if you don't understand that, you get on that circle. Oh no, you cannot have free will because you have something that was determined by 200 years ago. Yes, but my problem is when you add everything, you get emergency. Free will, conscience, all human behavior are emergent behaviors. Being emergent behaviors, they cannot be put in a clockwise manner. You cannot mount a watch out of it because it will have interactions that you cannot predict. So materially, they'll have free will. Some examples. The first idea of AI or free will is that machine that you have to knock or shake so it works. All your predictions are that machine should work, but if you don't shake it, sometimes it doesn't work. That's a materialistic way of free will. Every engineer thought that machine has a mind of its own because it goes to the point that you cannot accurately predict what's going on. So when you get to that, you get in a very complex system that you cannot differentiate that from a psychological idea of free will. If you cannot differentiate that as a psychological idea of free will, if everything is the way it is because that's what you are, and if you are actually will lead to you deciding in a certain way, you cannot psychologically, you cannot morally, you cannot philosophically get out of the idea of free will. If you have to reduce it and explain it through materialistical views, yes, you have to say it is limited to the unpredictability, but you cannot confuse two entries. Uh, I'm a very Cartesian, so sometimes I get a little bit uh, turned on because someone is saying, "Oh, Descartes didn't understand this or that. He was saying we are a machine or not." No, he was explaining in a machinist way, in a mechanic way, what he was seeing. And when he got to the point that his mechanics wasn't working, he said, for example, there's a soul in a pituitary gland that would get you to react like this. It was his way without knowing quantum mechanics, without knowing uh, chaotic theories, to say, oh, there are some things that I cannot predict. So, uh, in synthesis, emotions are rational, free will is deterministic, and that is not a contradiction. Everything that we do have causality, but it doesn't mean we don't have a saying. The thing that our saying is determined by what we are, and what we are is already determined. It doesn't take out that there is a chance, so we cannot predict it, and that is us that are doing. That's why the question is so difficult because you cannot say you are not what you are, and you cannot get out of the existence. just say, oh, I'll change the decision because the decision is yours. But yes, it was caused by previous things. Only you cannot be sure what those previous things will do with that decision. Thank you.